Welcome, folks, to the January 31st, 2025, All the News That's Fit to Podcast episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the show, what don't we have? A special election, Western Iowa police and church leaders on immigration, ticket bots and Swifties, Branstad versus Socialists, and, of course, because we're contractually obliged, a casino moratorium story. It's almost too much, frankly, so let's get right to it. Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. Tom Barton, the Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief, will be joining us later because he is busy finishing off some work on one of these exact topics. He'll be rolling in soon. Lead Des Moines Bureau Chief Maya Marchel Hoff is here. Hello, Maya.
Good afternoon, Erin.
Sarah Watson of the Quad City Times is with us. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Erin. And can I say, thank goodness, it's almost the end of January. We're almost there.
It was January rough for you, Sarah?
Oh, no, it just feels like a really long month.
Gotcha.
This week,
okay.
I can't believe it's still January this week.
Literally for the last day. By the time folks are listening, a lot of you will be in February. But the end of the month is almost here. Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal is back with us after leaving last week's podcast early in protest of my failure to cheer for his Chiefs. My apologies, Jared, and welcome back, and congratulations.
Job isn't done yet, Erin. Job is not done yet.
That's right. 60 minutes left, right? All right. And finally with us is Gazette columnist Todd Dorman. Hello, Todd.
Yes, hello. And just a reminder that February is kind of an odd month. It's got a different number of days, and that number is 783 days in February. So have fun getting through that.
That's a lot of days, Todd.
That's a lot of
days. All right. Let's start out this week with our one story that comes from outside of the Golden Dome of Wisdom, aka the Iowa Capitol. Jared McNett wrote a couple stories about how certain Western Iowa leaders are reacting to President Trump's orders regarding immigration and refugees. Jared, first of all, they were a couple of really interesting stories. Well done. I encourage everybody to find them on the Sioux City Journal's website. Tell us a little bit about what you learned in talking to those folks.
Yeah, Friday in particular, it seemed like as soon as we got done writing up about one of the releases from some of those public organizations, we got like another one in our inbox. So there were quite a few past week. The earliest of those was Thursday the 23rd. The Sioux City Police Department put out a release that was kind of touching on a few different things, saying Sioux City is not a sanctuary city, which there was a notable counter to that this week. But then the Sioux City PD also said that it's not enforcing federal immigration laws. It also acknowledged the anxiety and uncertainty among some residents over looming federal crackdowns on undocumented immigrants. And then the release also said that the primary job of Sioux City PD is to enforce Iowa state law and local ordinances, and that officers aren't going to be asking about citizenship when they're dealing with residents in their professional capacity. Sioux City's mayor, Bob Scott, told us on Tuesday of last week, I believe, that law enforcement would likely have an obligation to cooperate with any federal agencies carrying out directives of President Donald Trump. And then I guess the thing I was curious about, that's the police front. Have you guys in your respective cities, have the PDs there put out similar statements? I was wondering how many have already been putting out stuff like this.
I was actually wondering about that too. Sarah's shaking her head no. And I haven't heard of too many others doing it. I don't think Cedar Rapids has they, Todd?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah. So that's that on the police front. And then this week, one of the Sioux City Council members Matthew O'Kane said that he's heard about students, because he also works in the school district, that he's heard about students being afraid of going to school because of deportation fears regarding their families. He also said that Sioux City should look into becoming a sanctuary city, which is a little bit of a difference with Sioux City PD. And that he also said that the community in Siouxland is being kept afloat by our immigrant population here, which not only has a great number of restaurants and businesses, but supplies a lot of the labor at the various meat plants that we have. And then another thing on the school front, the superintendent, Rod Earlywine, said that attendance has been down slightly since Inauguration Day, but he didn't necessarily correlate that to deportation fears. He couldn't say one way or the other. So that's kind of in the Sioux City area. And then speaking of like other towns that run on immigrant labor in Iowa, the Storm Lake police put out a statement Friday, January 24th, that their officers won't be stopping individuals solely to inquire about immigration status. And their message notably was in both English and Spanish, because 41% of the population in Storm Lake is either Hispanic or Latino. Another town with kind of a similar demographic to that is Denison, and their police said in a statement that if requested, it would cooperate with federal law enforcement partners on immigration enforcement efforts. So that's a little bit different than what we heard from some of the other police. And that was kind of it as far as city and PD went. And then we had the diocese, and the Diocese of Sioux City. And I didn't check to see what like the other dioceses in the state did, but I would imagine I wouldn't think the Diocese of Sioux City acted alone on something like this. I wish I would have checked on that. But the Diocese of Sioux City has put out a statement saying that it's praying for the Siouxland immigrant community during challenging times, and spoke about whispers and kind of unsubstantiated claims about possible raids, which, you know, those kind of things are going to continue because people are afraid. And when people are afraid, those sorts of kind of claims proliferate. The diocese also noted that the Trump administration has made it possible for ICE raids on schools and churches, which is something that happened last week. The Trump administration made that possible again. And then the Diocese of Sioux City also mentioned blanket statements, quote unquote, about immigrants being criminals, and calls for mass deportations, which we've seen plenty of on our social media pages. People saying that everyone should go back, that immigrants in another one of our immigrant-heavy communities make the town stink, and that even when the Bible says stuff about strangers in strange lands and welcoming strangers, that God wasn't talking about the immigrants that are in our communities now. So that's kind of the lay of the land with PD and the city and the diocese and even some of the local residents, I guess.
That must have been in the fine print in that Bible verse, huh? That some of us missed, Jared.
Footnotes.
Footnotes. C note. Yeah, the other thing, and for anybody who's watching us on YouTube might have noticed my eyes darting around here as Jared talked, because you said you wondered about the Sioux City Diocese. Look, this is a cursory 5-second while we're trying to record a podcast Google search, but I don't see any of the other dioceses, anything from the other diocese weighing in. So I wonder if it was just Sioux City there too, which that's just kind of fascinating that we're hearing so much in Western Iowa on this, and not necessarily from other pockets of the state, other than you mentioned Storm Lake.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that might be obviously, even though some of the other towns in Iowa are bigger in terms of percentages of like immigrants,
Absolutely.
like we definitely have some of the highest percentages, and so that might be a driver for the Diocese of Sioux City feeling more of a need to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. That would make a lot of sense. Again, it's great work by Jared. Can't recommend strongly enough for you to check out that stuff at SiouxCityJournal.com if you haven't already. All right, moving on to a topic that will help us create a bridge back to the Iowa legislature. This week over in eastern Iowa, a special election was held to fill the Iowa Senate seat that was vacated when Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds chose former state Senator Chris Cornelier of LeClaire to be her new lieutenant governor. Sarah, last week you did your level best to handicap that special election for us, and Sarah's back now to tell us all about what happened.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear, Mike Zimmer, the Democrat, won the race. He won with 4,812 votes to Republican Katie Whittington's 4,473 votes. So about 3 percentage points that he won by in the district. It was a really interesting and unusual campaign. Like I mentioned last week, it was really short. The governor announced just before Christmas the date of the special election and that it would be January 28th. So that really only gives about a month for parties to recruit, pick candidates, and then just campaign their hearts out. And really every second counts and every vote and door knock counts during a campaign that is that short. Normally you've got like about, you've got almost a year sometimes to campaign, or from the primary to even just the primary to the general. You've got a lot more time, and then there was only about 10 days of early voting. It's, like I said, it's outside of election time, so people are thinking less about it, lower turnout, and there are also no other races on the ballot to compete with. So people who wanted to turn out for the race, really needed to be more motivated to turn out for their candidate. And so this was, Democrats really celebrated this as a big win. Since in several cycles they've just kind of gotten routed by Iowa Republicans, and it was really Republican seat to lose. To compare, in 2022, Cornelier won the district in 2022 with about close to 60%, about 24,000 votes. Trump won the district and counties in the district, and so in a general election setting, it leans more conservative, at least right now, though of course this is a Mississippi River County where Democrats used to have a lot of strong support, but it has eroded in the last decade or more. So then to get into the candidates, I mean, Zimmer was like a really well-known candidate in the district, and kind of, I would think probably Democrats like this, if we could dream up a candidate on paper, this is probably who it would be, because he lived or worked in all 3 of the counties of the district. Wow. He graduated from North Scott High School in Eldridge, which is slightly out of the district. Got his start as an industrial technology teacher in Jackson County, and lived and then worked as an industrial tech teacher at Central DeWitt. And then he served in administrative roles, including principal at North Scott, Pleasant Valley. And then when he retired from Pleasant Valley, he ran for Central DeWitt School Board in 2023 after some controversies, then won and elected president by his peers right away. So that's fairly unusual for a first-term school board candidate. And then he also ran a construction business during the summer. He's a member of a local church and is in a leadership role in a nonprofit. So that's a long list, but all that to say that he was like really involved and had deep roots in the community. And Katie Whittington, she had, her own resume as well. She was the chair of Trump's campaign in Jackson and Clinton counties, lived in Clinton for 10 years, has 4 kids. She'd been involved with local nonprofits that were really health freedom focused. One of them was a RFK Jr. founded organization. And so but still that's, 10 years versus about 60 years that Zimmer has lived in the district. And then also Zimmer got a head start as well. So he announced his candidacy almost immediately after the governor set the date for the special election. Democrats really rallied around him, but Republicans didn't settle on a candidate until January. There were three candidates, including Whittington, that sought the Senate seat. There was State Representative Tom Detterman and a Clinton County farmer Dennis Campbell. In a short race like that, having that delay in like picking your nominee definitely hinders whoever eventually gets the nomination, because you just have less time to campaign. And then also Whittington got sick, so she didn't go to a candidate forum hosted by the DeWitt Chamber. She initially did not respond to our survey or a couple other local media outlets like candidate surveys. So when you're already at a disadvantage for name recognition in the district, that I think probably was not good for her in her campaign. But yeah, so that's a little bit about the race. It was still close, but Democrats are really touting this as a win for them and for Iowa.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I was just gonna say, Sarah, that I'm glad that you were able to come on, and folks should read your story as well, because that's all the proper context to a special election here that you don't maybe see when the DNC sends out an email saying what a big deal it was that Iowa Democrats split. I mean, there's a lot that goes into something
Right.
like that, and maybe I mean, I understand, and I recognize, and in fairness, both parties do this kind of thing. You have a little special election, and all of a sudden one little 3-county election in Iowa is a harbinger of everything that's going on politically in the nation. All parties involved are guilty of that, and we've seen that, and that's why I appreciate you coming on and giving us all that context.
Yeah, no problem.
It wasn't just parties though, because I noticed like a bunch of the like real political junkies that I follow, like national politics people, some of them were tweeting about it too, and like I had to just smile, because I knew from like listening to Sarah last week, it's like this is a very specific like case, and like it sounds like there's not necessarily a lot from what you were saying, Sarah, that people should extrapolate because of how specific and how well known the candidate was.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, this was Mike Zimmer was really well known candidate in the district, had a lot of different roles, knew a lot of different people, and then with it being so short, Katie Whittington being sidelined by illness, that but at the same time, I mean, Democrats are gonna take the win that they got. So, and they did have to work hard, to turn out their voters.
Yeah, without a doubt. All the caveats said, you would rather be on the winning side than the losing of this, regardless of the reasons, and especially in Iowa Democrats' position. And look, that doesn't change the facts that they are talking about. That, as you noted, it was a district that Trump won. It was a district that Republicans won in the Senate 3 years ago. So and those remain true. It's just as soon as y'all hear someone saying, "Look at this as an example of voters repudiating the new administration," you can change the channel at that point.
I think my favorite thing from one of the national people that I saw was one of the people from Semaphore tweeted out a clip from The Big Short where Christian Bale says, "I may have been early, but I'm not wrong." And then they captioned it, "Ann Seltzer right now."
Oh,
I really enjoyed that one in particular, I think.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Well, the reason I think it's a little bigger deal is, when's the last time a Democrat won in a district that wasn't in a large urban area?
There we go.
That's I mean, this is like I don't know, like seeing some sort of like a Yeti maybe, or something like that.
Lewis Black has an old bit about a rare white elk. I remember. I can't even remember the contents, but I just remember the rare white elk. That's a great point too, Todd, and thank you. Like, forget the headwind stuff. You're absolutely right. That's a huge deal for Iowa Democrats, because it's an Iowa Democrat who's not from Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, or Des Moines, right? And those are few and far between these days.
Yeah.
Any one like in in Jackson and Clinton counties, and then came really close. He like tied in Scott County, and in Scott County it's like the most rural areas. So it's so it's, he did well in all three counties.
Yep. And that kind of real quick, and then we'll move on. But that kind of, you stressed it, Sarah, and that's so appropriate. That kind of familiarity in the community that's important in any state house election. These local campaigns, just having someone. I know that the parties, when they're recruiting candidates, they love people who have been visible and in the forefront in their communities. That's such a big deal in a general election, much less a special election where even fewer people are coming out to vote. So all right. Well, we'll see Senator-elect Zimmerman soon enough. Okay, let's get underneath the Golden Dome now and talk about some of the recent legislative goings on. Maya, you've been covering a proposal that would address so-called ticket bots. Please explain to our listeners, first of all, who may not know what those are. And that bill was inspired by the experiences of one particular pop superstar's fans. And listeners, if you don't know who this pop superstar in question is, I'll give you a hint. You can see her on TV each week cheering on Jared's Chiefs. Maya, tell us all about it.
Yeah, Erin, I guess you could say legislators on both sides of the aisle may have bad blood with these ticket bots. I'm sorry.
No apology
A
necessary.
lawmaker
Don't you dare
a
apologize.
lawmaker said that in a committee meeting, so it's all fair game.
That's
Yeah,
right.
so basically, first, before getting into what is dubbed as the Taylor Swift bill, lawmakers are really trying to target these things called ticket bots, which I don't fully understand. I'm not super well versed in technology, but basically, it's like a ticket scalper times,
Yeah,
you know,
infinity.
times right, exactly. So basically, ticket bots or bots are automated software programs that perform repetitive tasks. So instead of one ticket scalper going in, it's just tons of them. And this has caused a lot of frustration with fans, whether getting tickets to sporting events or concerts, or whatever. When they go online to get tickets, when either sales open or pre-sale start, fans are kicked out of online queues, or they have to end up getting them on the resale market, and those are just jacked up prices, and fees are also jacked up for those. So these bills have kind of populated out of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. A lot of fans experienced frustration and a lot of ticket bots in that process of getting these tickets. And so a lot of states, including Minnesota, passed these Taylor Swift bills to target these ticket bots. And this was actually brought in Iowa last year, but it wasn't as successful. So people are trying again. It's looking like it's having a better chance. This is, again, kind of a piece of bipartisan legislation that is not contentious. And so it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. It advanced out of the Senate Technology Committee this week. And, the bill's introducer, Senator Jeff Reichman, he talked at the subcommittee about his own experiences and his own family's experiences with struggling to get tickets, which I'm sure everyone does. And he also mentioned something very close to home with Iowans, women's Hawkeye basketball games. Some folks he knew found tickets, but the fees were almost as much as the ticket price. So this is a new problem for people. It's just finally come to Iowa. So
yeah,
the bill has. The problem's been here for a couple of years. So
right. Sorry, go ahead, Jared.
I was just going to say, because I have plenty of experience with this, with how many concerts I go to. And yeah, as it seems like sometimes, especially if you're waiting right away, as soon as you get in, magically there have just been all kinds of entire sections that have already been gobbled up. And it's like, how did that happen as quickly as it did? And yeah, the bots are definitely one of the reasons for that. I was curious, Maya, because the bots are definitely a problem. Did anyone like in the hearings talk about like the problem too? Is it just there's so few ticket vendors, and that can also kind of, I was curious about that.
Funnily enough, that did not come up. Of course, that's kind of a different conversation, especially happening with Ticketmaster and Live Nation kind of having a lot of dominance in that
Yeah. They have
industry.
like an
That did not come
insane
up.
amount of the pie. It like I forget what the numbers are, but yeah, it's basically them and like no one else for ticket sales.
Yeah, definitely. That didn't come up. I think people just kind of wanted to stick to the bots because that's kind of a different path. But so basically, the bill would require a ticket seller to report known violations of the bill's provisions around the bots within 5 days of noticing one, and then would require the attorney general to establish an electronic reporting system to submit reports of these bots. And then the attorney general can bring a civil action for using bots to get tickets, which could come with a civil penalty of up to $10,000. So,
And I should extrapolate and forgive me for not knowing this. I probably should because I'm loosely aware of the issue. But correct me if I'm wrong here, Maya and Jared. That basically the reason for these bots, and I ask this in case someone else is like me listening and isn't 100% sure, is that they grab these and then the people who are designing these bots take those tickets and resell them on the secondary market for those exorbitant prices that you're talking about, right, Maya? Like this is a money making scheme, correct?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just basically trying to get a whole lot of the tickets so you can jack up the price on different resale
yeah,
markets. So, yeah,
yep,
it is a part of it.
yeah. And as for the vendor monopoly thing, as a proud Gen Xer and as a fan, I say Pearl Jam tried, man. We took our
Yep,
shot.
they did. They fought the good fight and they lost.
And they lost. What, 20, 30 years ago, too, which is crazy to think of how long that's been an issue. All right. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see if that bill passes. Oh, really quick, I was going to ask you. You told me this, Maya, when we were talking about this up at the Capitol, and you mentioned Senator Reichman, and this is a very bill that got a lot of attention, like we talked about because of the Taylor Swift stuff. But he had an experience with like he told you a band that he's a fan of that he had similar issues with. Am I right, or did I imagine that?
Oh,
I just
geez.
remember it wasn't Taylor Swift. He said no, but maybe he just said more generally speaking, going to
Oh,
concerts.
geez. I want to say it's a country artist, but that might be incorrect. He just said he and his family like to go to musical events.
Okay.
His daughter's a Taylor Swift fan.
Oh, there you
so
go. There you go. Okay. So
There's that
he's
connection.
Swift adjacent. All right. Another legislative hearing this week took a turn for the interesting when a former governor started debating public members who, like that former governor, had come to testify on the bill. As often happens in the Iowa legislature. And by often, I mean, I think literally never has that happened before. The bill being considered would create and this is a formal title, School of Intellectual Freedom at the University of Iowa. And it was former Governor Terry Branstad who attended the subcommittee hearing to lend his support for the bill. But Branstad did more than that. He also directly engaged some of the other people there to speak on the bill. And at one point accused all of I believe it was all the professors at the University of Iowa of being socialists. Todd, what happened here?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Terry Branstad is renting out his gravitas. You need someone to come to a board meeting or a birthday party or just somewhere where you need the voice of the governor. He's available. So he was at this hearing to stick up for the School of Intellectual Freedom, which sounds a little to me like the old German Democratic Republic, which was East Germany, by the way. And to say, yeah, he had a bunch of socialist professors back in the 60s. How that's relevant now, I really don't know. But he mixed it up with some people who don't like the idea of creating the school, and so I expect to see him, other places, ribbon cuttings, maybe for like new Jimmy John's sub places, stuff like that. I think he's looking for something to do. He's been a governor and an ambassador, and now he just wants to show up at your event and give it the weight that it deserves.
So renting out his gravitas, does he have to put that on campaign finance or like lobbying disclosure forms?
No, the laws haven't caught up with renting out his gravitas. I mean, that's something they might want to work on, but yeah, at this point, there's no regulatory structure at all. It's dark money, I guess.
I mean, seriously, Todd, there can't be another example of a former governor coming to testify on a bill, right? I can't imagine that's ever happened.
I can't think of one.
For the record, Todd has his take to the benefit of our listeners. I'm not saying good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just setting historical precedent here.
It's unusual, but now Tom Vilsack's also going to be back in Des Moines with the World Food Prize, so maybe he'll show up at the Capitol to help Democrats, pass something. But yeah, we're going to be lousy with former governors, is what we're going to be. Chet Culver's around here somewhere too, I think.
So what was the back and forth exactly?
I did not cover it. Our fantastic higher education reporter Vanessa Miller covered this hearing for us, so I didn't witness it. But as I understand it, and Tom and Todd, whatever fill in any blanks here, it was during the public commentary, obviously portion of a subcommittee hearing where they go around the room and anybody who wants to offer public comments can. And former Governor Branstad, I believe, had already given his at this point. And then other people, as Todd noted, were speaking against it, in opposition to it. And Governor Branstad, again, correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand, just kind of jumped in and basically started debating these people, challenging what they were saying about the bill and their opposition to it. Did I miss any of the mark there, guys?
Yeah, you did. At one point, someone expressed opposition and he said, I guess it's your way or the highway, something like that. And, it's as you get older, and I'm about there, you lose the ability to have internal dialogue. So things just kind of shoot out there. And so that's likely what happened here.
I'm still recovering from as you get older, and I'm about there. I'm writing that one down. Oh my gosh! All right. Well, that was fascinating. We'll see if we get former Governor Branstad again at the Capitol. I'll tell you, as a reporter covering the State House, I wouldn't mind seeing former Governor Branstad at the Capitol because he's a former governor who talks to reporters a lot more than the current governor does. So we'd at least have that going for us. Again, setting historical precedent, just reporting the facts. Whether that's a good thing, bad thing, or otherwise is up to you, the fine listener of the On Iowa Politics podcast. Finally this week, and this one's fresh. I mean, so fresh that literally, as we talked about at the top, and as you may have saw as you're watching on the YouTubes, that Tom Barton had to join us in progress from the State House. The legislative action on a proposed new 5-year moratorium on state licensed casinos kicked into high gear at the end of this week. We're recording again, as we usually do, Thursday afternoon. They literally just had that debate earlier this afternoon, and Tom covered that and reported for us. Again, go see our story. So the House debated, passed its bill, obviously. The Senate, which is the unknown variable in this whole big equation, passed its bill through its first 2 legislative steps, making it eligible for debate next week when they come back. And there's a deadline here. Thursday, I believe, right, Tom, is when the IRGC, Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission, is set to vote on whether to approve the Cedar Rapids Casinos application. So if the legislators want this moratorium in place before IRGC gets a chance to say that, they need to have it done by Wednesday, effectively by Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, so Governor Reynolds can sign it if she chooses. We don't know whether she would or not. She has not said that publicly. So Tom, and you can give us a highlight or two from debate as well if you'd like. But to my big wind up there. It's all up to the Senate now. What are you hearing about the latest odds on the Senate passing this bill and crushing the dream of those who want a new casino in Cedar Rapids?
Yeah, so just based off of the conversations that we heard in the Senate subcommittee and the vote there, it seems that there would be support in the Senate to pass this. We don't know that definitely for sure. Earlier this week, when I was talking to Senate Republicans, they essentially said it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And I asked the chair of the Senate Local Government Committee, which advanced the bill out of committee, making it eligible for debate on the Senate floor, as you mentioned, next week. I asked him if he had any ideas when they might debate the bill. He said he didn't know. He couldn't say, that's going to be a call to be made by Senate leadership, by the Senate president and the majority leader. And we've previously heard before the session started that Senate President Amy Sinclair had personal reservations about passing a moratorium. Now, whether that would hold it up, we don't know. We did hear from House Speaker Pat Grassley today. He spoke with reporters earlier today before the House voted and passed the casino moratorium, saying that in his discussions with leadership in the Senate, that he was given assurances that that they will take it up, that it's not going to be dead on arrival, as he said. But
Tom, sorry to interrupt really quick. I'm just gonna before you move on, you mentioned Amy Sinclair. I'll just flag for everybody listening, in depending on when you listen to the podcast, this may have already happened and aired, but Senator Sinclair is going to be our guest on Iowa Press this weekend, so I think it's a pretty safe bet that that topic will come up. I don't honestly expect her to break news and tell us what's going to happen, but her response will be interesting regardless, for the reasons that Tom just laid out.
Yeah. So again, if you're just trying to get an indication of how things might go in the Senate, if you're just looking at what happened in the committee as kind of a indicator or a barometer, it passed out of the committee 9-3, with 3 Democrats voting against, saying that the legislature should not intervene in this process. We've created the Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission for a reason. Let's have it do its job. It's twice voted against granting a casino license or granting a gambling license for a casino in Cedar Rapids, based largely off of concerns that a Cedar Rapids casino would largely rely on pulling customers and revenue from existing casinos in the states. The Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission last month put out 2 market studies that, essentially said not much has changed in Iowa's gambling market, in that a Cedar Rapids casino would still largely, again, pull customers and revenues away from surrounding casinos in eastern Iowa. Cedar Rapids casino backers, however, point out that the study says that a Cedar Rapids casino would still lead to about $60 million in net new gaming revenue to Iowa, and that at a time when overall gambling revenues across the state have declined over recent years, and casino attendance has been kind of on a downward trend in recent years, that they focus on that $60 million in potential new revenue to the state. And you have a lot of lawmakers who have casinos in their district. And so, as we saw in the committee meeting, it didn't, and we said this before in previous podcasts, this is not an issue that breaks down neatly along partisan lines, right? This all has to do with, the particular lawmaker in their district and how they feel their district might be impacted by a Cedar Rapids casino, if they feel that again is going to, lead to, potential job losses or business closures or reduced gaming revenue to nonprofits. So casinos in Iowa, have a nonprofit license holder that disperses grants to nonprofits. A portion of casino revenues, they use those to make grants to local nonprofits. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting. I did ask Senator Webster, whose district actually has 2 casinos. I believe his district has both Rhythm City Casino in Davenport as well as the Isle Casino Hotel in Bettendorf. Anyway, I was asking him if there's a sense of urgency to get something done before the IRGC makes a ruling, or I guess makes a vote or decides on whether to grant a Cedar Rapids casino license, because the bill that passed the House, as well as the bill advanced in the Senate, is retroactive. It's a 5-year moratorium that would prohibit the Racing and Gaming Commission, the state's gambling regulators, from issuing any new license in the state from January 1st, 2025 through June 30, 2030. And he said that he didn't feel that, well, first he said that, if the Senate needs to move quickly on this, he felt that they could. He felt that, they could potentially get something passed and to the governor by Wednesday, but didn't feel that it was incumbent upon the Senate to necessarily get this bill, I guess, across the finish line before that February 6th IRGC meeting, because it is retroactive, but said that he did think that, getting it passed before the IRGC meets and makes a determination gives us a little bit more certainty.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm glad you mentioned that, Tom, because I feel like that's not, and you've been taking the lead on this story, so I'm not as familiar with it as you are, but I know that's a part of it that has kind of flown under the radar by me anyways, and that's so fascinating. So the idea there is, theoretically, if they didn't do it before IGC, but still pass that bill as it's written with that retroactive, it doesn't matter what the IRG sees, because they could approve the casino license, but if they pass this bill, that would essentially negate that approved license, right?
Correct.
Man, that is
Doing
wild.
it. I mean, that's my understanding from
Yeah.
talking to lawmakers and just the way that the bill is written. I would have to think that lawmakers want to avoid that scenario, though,
Right.
just because of just the questions, the complexity.
Yeah, optics, if nothing else.
Well, that too,
Yeah.
that as well. So I would think that there would be a push to try and get this done.
I feel like that would be ripe for a lawsuit too, and I don't know what
right.
what kind of
Right.
authority the legislature has. Maybe they're not worried about that, but
Yeah, and then just quickly, another thing to note that maybe gets lost in this is, while just broadly speaking, this is a 5-year moratorium, it goes beyond that and actually sets up criteria that the Racing and Gaming Commission would have to would use to consider future casinos. So, going beyond June 30th, 2030, going forward, if the Racing and Gaming Commission, when it considers future casinos, it spells out a list of criteria that it needs to look at. And, the way that is written, in effect, you could look at that and see that as actually a permanent ban for a Cedar Rapids casino. So it talks about that regulators could not issue new casino licenses if they determined doing so would negatively impact the adjusted gross receipts of an existing casino by more than 10%, or if it would negatively impact the annual distribution of grants to community organizations by the casino's nonprofit license holder. And then if an applicant was denied by the commission, another applicant in the same county could not apply for a license for 8 years under the bill. So, I mean, essentially the way this is worded is essentially, saying that a Cedar Rapids casino essentially could not happen in the future, and that this is all about kind of protecting the interest of existing casinos in the state, and Iowa's Gaming Association, which represents those facilities, which argues that with 19 licensed commercial casinos and 4 tribal casinos, that the market in Iowa is saturated essentially,
Right.
and that any new facility, especially Cedar Rapids facility, given its close proximity to other casinos in eastern Iowa, would again cannibalize revenues from them and dilute the state's gambling market.
Yeah, because like as you said, every study has shown that in recent years, and there's no reason to believe that would change in any time in the near future. I assume it would take a huge population boost before something like that would change. I'm curious, really quick, before we sign off here, Jared and Sarah, put you on the spot a little bit, because you both got casinos in your backyards. Do the people in your neck of the woods talk about this bill a lot? Is there much interest there on either river?
Negatory.
Interesting.
Not that I know of in like public forums, but obviously they're in, the state house advocating
Sure.
against or
Yeah.
advocating for a moratorium
Right.
and against the new casinos. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always like to ask that question because you get these topics that dominate us here at the Capitol, and I wonder how much folks are tuned into it outside. It's a big deal regardless, and obviously we'll find out next week because of that Thursday deadline. We'll know whether by the time we gather once again here and cast pod once more, we will know whether the legislature has acted. So stay tuned and join us again next week. That's going to do it for this episode of On Iowa Politics. We appreciate you all joining us. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you can watch people leave early, arrive late, and add that to your podcast enjoyment. You can find the podcast also every week on your preferred Gazette or Lean newspaper website. And now that you listen to the On Iowa Politics podcast, please make sure to also subscribe to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox you will receive the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. I do that every day. Please make my effort worth it. I would very much appreciate it. And lastly, don't forget that the work you heard here today, and I've said it throughout, please check out their stories. You can find it all on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For the whole gang, Tom Barton, Maya Marchel, Hoff, Sarah Watson, Jared McNett, Todd Dorman, and our producer, Bailey Chehan, I'm Erin Murphy. Be well, everyone. Be good.